Imagine being a teenage girl, traveling home like any ordinary day, only to be told in front of dozens of strangers that you don't deserve a seat, that your medical condition, your very life, isn't enough. This isn't just unfair, it's humiliating. But what happens next? What happens when a billionaire father sees his daughter being disrespected and decides that no one, not even a flight attendant, not even an entire airline, can get away with this? In the next few minutes, you're going to witness courage, confrontation, and a fight for dignity that will shock you and leave you questioning how far people will go to stand up against injustice. It was supposed to be a routine flight, just another trip across the country. But for Layla, nothing about this flight would ever feel routine again. She had her insulin kit tucked carefully beside her headphones in, trying to block out the low hum of the airplane. She was exhausted, nervous, and just ready to get home. Then came Carla, the flight attendant with a cold smile and a clipboard. One look at Layla, one glance at her seat assignment, and suddenly everything shifted. "I'm sorry, you can't sit here," Carla said. Her voice was calm, almost polite. But something in her tone made Layla's chest tighten. "What do you mean?" Layla asked, confusion and panic rising. "I paid for this seat. I need to sit here, my insulin." "Rules are rules," Carla interrupted, cutting her off. "You can't stay here." Time seemed to slow. Around her, passengers whispered, glanced, shifted uncomfortably. Layla's heart raced. She tried to explain her medical condition, to show the seriousness of her diabetes, but Carla wasn't listening. Every word Layla spoke bounced off a wall of bureaucracy, a wall that seemed taller than the airplane itself. And then, the moment Layla feared most, the attendant leaned closer, her tone sharp. "You'll have to move, or we'll have to get security involved." Fear, anger, frustration. It all collided inside Layla. She was just a teenager, a kid in a world that suddenly felt too cold, too unfair. But she wasn't alone. Somewhere down the aisle, someone was noticing. Someone with power, someone who had the means to make the impossible happen. Her dad, Julian, a billionaire used to bending the rules of the world, was watching this unfold over the phone, getting every detail from a panicked call from Layla's best friend. Julian's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was a violation, a humiliation, and he would not stand for it. But what would he do? Would it be a quiet intervention? A call behind closed doors? Or something that would shock everyone on that plane? Maybe even everyone watching this story unfold online. Layla felt trapped, powerless, alone, but she had no idea that her father was about to turn the rules upside down. The entire plane was about to witness something they would never forget. Something so unexpected that it would make headlines, flood social media, and leave people talking for weeks. What would Julian do? How far would he go to protect his daughter? And how would Layla react when the world watches her struggle turn into a jaw-dropping confrontation that no one saw coming? Hold on, because this isn't just a story about a flight. It's about courage, outrage, and a father who refuses to let injustice go unchecked. And by the end, you won't believe what happens next. Before the storm, life for Alia was simple, yet full of warmth. At 16, she had a laugh that could light up the quietest rooms, and a smile that made her mother beam with pride. Her mornings began with the scent of fresh pancakes in the kitchen, the sound of her younger brother playing with his toy cars, and the soft hum of neighborhood chatter outside. Her father, Marcus, worked long hours as a local business owner, but he always made time for family dinners, weekend trips to the park, and bedtime stories that transported Alia to worlds beyond her own. School was a mix of textbooks, soccer practice, and giggling with friends who had known her since childhood. Life wasn't perfect, but it was safe, predictable, and filled with small joys. Alia had dreams, college, a career in medicine, traveling the world. But she also had a quiet awareness that not everyone saw her with the same fairness. Sometimes, in fleeting moments, she noticed sideways glances or hushed whispers when she walked into a room. Nothing overt, nothing that made her heart race. Yet her neighborhood was diverse, yet subtle lines of separation existed. She sometimes heard her friends' parents joke about people from outside in ways that felt uncomfortable, even if everyone laughed along. These were shadows of a prejudice she hadn't fully faced yet. But the first crack in her sense of belonging was there. Faint but undeniable, Aliyah went to school, played soccer, helped her mother in the kitchen, and shared secrets with her best friend, Maya. Life was ordinary, sweet, and fleetingly innocent. Little did she know, the world outside her close-knit circle was ready to test her courage, resilience, and dignity in ways she couldn't imagine. A single moment, an encounter she couldn't control, was about to turn her world upside down. The airplane cabin was tense. Layla clutched her insulin kit, her palms sweaty, every heartbeat echoing in her ears. Carla's eyes never left her, cold and unyielding, as if the rules she invoked were shields against humanity. Around them, the murmur of passengers grew louder, some curious, some uncomfortable, others just wishing they weren't caught in the middle. Layla tried again. "I just need this seat. My condition, it's serious." Her voice trembled. A quiet sigh escaped her lips, almost pleading. Carla's response was dismissive, a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I don't make the rules. Move, or we'll have to escalate this." Every fiber in Layla's body screamed injustice. She had followed the rules, prepared for the flight. Yet here she was, trapped, humiliated, and invisible to those who should have cared most. A few passengers whispered sympathy, a few rolled their eyes, but no one stepped in, yet. Julian, her father, watched the unfolding drama through frantic phone updates. His heart raced, his mind calculating. He was not a man to accept wrongdoing quietly, but what would he do? Confront the airline publicly? Demand immediate action? The answer came like a spark of fire. He would act, and the consequences would ripple far beyond this plane. Back on the aircraft, the tension escalated. Layla's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to cry openly. Not here, not now. She gritted her teeth, balancing between fear and defiance. Around her, whispers turned into murmurs of outrage. Some passengers exchanged uneasy glances. Others suddenly pulled out their phones. The entire cabin felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Carla leaned closer, her tone sharpening. "This isn't negotiable. You move." Layla's resolve hardened. She refused to be reduced to a statistic, a victim of someone else's rigid rules. She stood her ground quietly, firmly. The whispers turned into murmurs of support. A man 2 rows behind cleared his throat, hesitant but protective. Julian's phone vibrated. "Dad, it's escalating. She's refusing." He didn't hesitate. "Hold on, just stay calm. Watch what happens next." Suddenly, the flight attendant's manager appeared in the aisle. The passengers held their breath. Would he side with the rules or with justice? The cabin felt electric, suspended between chaos and the impossible resolution no one yet dared to imagine. The next moments would decide more than just a seat. They would determine dignity, courage, and the power of standing up against systemic injustice, even in a confined, crowded airplane cabin. And one question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Who would blink first? Carla, Layla, or the system itself? The cabin was electric with tension. Layla's heart raced like a drumbeat in her chest. Every eye was on her. Every whisper, every sideways glance seemed magnified. Carla's arms were crossed, her expression rigid, unyielding. But something had shifted. The subtle murmurs of sympathy had grown into quiet murmurs of outrage. "Move." Carla barked again, but the authority in her voice was faltering. Layla took a deep breath, steadying herself. "No," she said, her voice clear and unwavering, resonating through the aisle. "I am not moving. I am a human being and I have rights. I deserve to sit here." A hush fell. The murmurs grew louder, passengers leaning forward, phones raised, capturing the confrontation. The once distant eyes of the cabin had now focused entirely on her. Layla's courage wasn't born from fearlessness. It was born from necessity. She would not let humiliation define her. She would not let someone else's prejudice dictate her dignity. Carla's jaw tightened. She glanced at the other flight attendants for backup, but even they hesitated, sensing the swell of collective attention and moral pressure. The plane, once a small world of rules and routine, had transformed into a stage for justice, or at least the chance for it. Then came Julian. He appeared at the front of the plane, composed but radiating authority. His voice was calm but carried an unmistakable weight. "This stops now. he said, looking directly at Carla. "You will treat my daughter with the respect she deserves, or I will ensure this situation is addressed at every level of your company and beyond." The cabin seemed to freeze. A few passengers gasped audibly. Others whispered to each other, some nodding subtly, a quiet wave of solidarity spreading. Carla's rigid posture faltered. For the first time, Layla saw hesitation flicker across her face, but the confrontation wasn't over. One final defining moment remained. Carla, realizing she was losing control, raised her voice. Layla cut her off, stepping forward slightly. "I am not just a passenger. I am a person, and I will not be ignored." The words landed like a thunderclap. The plane held its collective breath. Every eye, every camera, every whisper had shifted the balance of power. The small, invisible force of bias that had been pressing down on Layla was cracking, breaking under courage, solidarity, and moral conviction. Julian stayed close, reassuring his daughter with a glance. Layla could feel the weight of her father's presence, not overbearing, but protective, empowering. It was as if the injustice around her was being held at bay by sheer will. Finally, Carla exhaled sharply, the last of her authority slipping away. "Fine," she muttered, stepping aside. "Sit." Layla sank into the seat, her hands trembling but her head held high. The cabin seemed to exhale with her. Whispers of support, nods, and quiet applause filled the space. She had not just claimed a seat, she had claimed her dignity, and yet, as the plane hummed along at 30,000 feet, an unspoken question lingered in the air. What would this fight cost in the days to come? And would the world outside the airplane see the courage it had witnessed in that small, tense aisle? The stage was set. The confrontation was over. But the repercussions, both personal and public, were just beginning. The tension in the airplane finally dissipated, replaced by a cautious calm. Layla sat in her seat, her insulin kit safely beside her, her chest still rising and falling from the adrenaline. Around her, the murmurs of support continued, a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement from the passengers who had witnessed her courage. What had started as humiliation ended as validation, a quiet but powerful victory for dignity. Julian stayed close, giving his daughter a reassuring smile. "You were incredible," he said softly. Layla felt a warmth spread through her, not just from relief but from pride. She had faced fear, injustice, and prejudice head-on, and she had stood her ground. The flight continued, but the ripple effects of what had just occurred were already beginning. Phones buzzed with notifications. Passengers quietly shared the story online. Social media became a wave of attention, amplifying the incident far beyond the airplane's cabin. Julian, aware of the potential fallout, guided Layla with care, teaching her that courage wasn't just in the moment. It was in owning the story afterward, using it as a force for awareness and change. Carla, the flight attendant, faced immediate scrutiny. Her actions were reported to the airline's higher management. Internal investigations began, and policies regarding accessibility, medical conditions, and discrimination were reviewed. What had once seemed like a minor confrontation transformed into a case study in accountability. But the story didn't just impact those in the air. Layla's classmates, friends, and neighbors heard about her bravery. Some were inspired to speak up in their own moments of injustice. Others reflected on the subtle biases they had ignored. Julian, with his platform and resources, helped guide conversations about systemic prejudice and personal responsibility. The incident became a lesson not only for the airline but for the community around them. Racism and discrimination don't just hurt individuals, they corrode trust, community, and shared humanity. For Layla, the experience was transformative. The humiliation she endured became a catalyst for resilience, teaching her that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. She became an advocate for those who often have no voice, speaking to local groups, supporting anti-discrimination initiatives, and mentoring younger students facing prejudice. The moral clarity of the experience was undeniable. Racism isolates and wounds. Prejudice weakens the bonds that hold communities together. But unity, courage, and advocacy create healing, empowerment, and meaningful change. Layla's moment of defiance reminded everyone who witnessed it, on that plane, online, or in person, that standing up against hate is not just a personal victory, It is a triumph for shared humanity. As the plane finally touched down, Julian and Layla held hands, knowing the story was far from over, but confident that their actions had set a precedent. The world could be harsh, unjust, and often indifferent, but their courage, love, and integrity had carved a space where fairness and dignity prevailed. And in that moment, the lesson was crystal clear. Racism may try to break us. Prejudice may try to silence us, but courage, true, unwavering courage, can overcome hate, inspire change, and bring people together in ways that nothing else can. Layla had lost nothing in her fight. She had gained a voice, a story, and a reminder that standing for what is right is always worth it.